All right, welcome back. It's Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, the declaration of Ahmadu Fintiri as the elected governor of Adamawa State by the Independent National Electoral Commission has ended the tension that soaked the people of Adamawa as a result of the most talked about governorship election of 2023. It was one election which will linger in the minds of Nigerians, especially the political class. We'll be talking about this now, and we have in the studio a public affairs analyst, Emmanuel Osemeka, with us in the studio to give perspectives to some of the matters arising from that supplementary election. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, first things first. Your initial reaction to the drama. I mean, everyone is talking, giving his opinion about what he thinks happened and, you know, how we got here and the rest of them. How does it come to you?
I think the first thing to do is to congratulate ATM for winning second time in office. Ahmadu Fintiri is known as ATM in Adamawa State. I didn't expect anything less, actually. I was privileged to be in Adamawa State from 2014 till 2019. So I have a glimpse of what the state is like. I worked in Madagali and Michika for, that spread of time. To answer your question, well, to me, I said, here we go again. Because
it didn't come as a surprise.
Not necessarily, because the level of impunity that has gone on in the country, if you are a close watcher of events in Nigeria, you will agree that impunity was getting overhang. It was getting overboard. It was getting overdosed across the length and breadth of Nigeria. For example, we've seen impunity across every sector, at the executive level, legislative level, judicial level, how much more INEC. So it wasn't really a surprise to me. All I said was that, oh, here we go again.
It wasn't a surprise that a REC announced the result. He was not empowered to announce?
Well,
because we hadn't seen that at all.
We hadn't seen that at all. It wasn't a surprise to me, and it's also not a surprise to me that the APC candidate read an acceptance speech within minutes. It wasn't also a surprise to me that the same APC candidate is in court trying to stop INEC, from changing supposedly what the REC did, relying on a bogus Section 149 and all that. It wasn't a surprise to me at all. You see, the truth is, as a student of Nigerian politics, right, if you go through what has happened over time, most especially in the recent past, you will agree that we've hit, different milestones at every now and then. I mean, take a look at the Naira redesign issue. Take a look at the judgment of the Supreme Court. Take a look at, judgment of the Supreme Court on the Naira redesign. Take a look at the judgment of the Supreme Court on the candidacy of the current Senate President, Ahmed Lawan. Take a look at the judgment of the Supreme Court on the candidacy of Akpabio. So nothing should surprise you really in Nigeria. In Nigeria, to me, in these days is, so what new low are we going to score? That's what there has been. I was watching, one lawyer on TV when he was saying that, he made an allusion to say that if President Muhammadu Buhari is truly in charge of Nigeria, he must, as a matter of urgency, cause an investigation into this. But
what are we talking about? There have been several indicators before the election, as a matter of fact.
Adamawa election.
Civil society groups have raised a lot of concerns about Adamawa election, or let me say the tendency for manipulation in Adamawa State. Questions have been raised about the REC that we are talking about right
Correct.
now.
Correct.
There was a leaked audio where the REC was heard, making certain, demands of a returning officer and the rest of them. With all that, it wasn't sufficient enough for us to have averted this kind of embarrassment.
So that is why severally, many of us have advocated that it is important that Nigerians pay close attention and close interest in our leadership recruitment system or processes. So, for example, RECs are nominated, or national commissioners, so take a case in point, INEC are nominated. Who takes interest in who and who is being appointed? How many people are interested? Even the political parties themselves. Are they really interested in scrutinizing, who and who is appointed? For example, if you recall, in the recent past, Loretta Onoche was nominated as a national commissioner. She almost killed through, almost. If not for the civil society, what did the opposition parties do? What did they say? Nothing.
No, but even the Senate didn't agree to her
The Senate didn't agree because of the pressure from the civil society groups. The civil society groups stood their ground, investigated, and brought evidence to show that she's still a card-carrying member of the political party and is against the law. Besides that, there are other commissioners that were appointed who are card-carrying members of the political party, even RECs in today's INEC. There are court cases that resident electoral commissioners have disobeyed. What has happened? Nothing. There are court cases that, judgments that, restrained INEC from carrying out a particular activity using a particular group who are, interested parties in the election. INEC turned blind eyes to it. So that's why I say, if you are a political watcher in Nigeria, not even a student of Nigerian political history, but if you are a political watcher, you will realize that we are constantly scoring new lows. So the issue is, that's why I described that the issue for me was, what other new low are we going to score in this? So like you clearly mentioned, there were clear evidence that this particular REC was complicit. He's a lawyer, for God's sake, so he's not even an ordinary person who is not learned.
But this REC, like, these questions keep nagging at me, and I must ask it. This REC is qualified enough to know where his power starts and stops. And surely he must have known that a declaration by himself cannot stand. So in your view, what made him make that declaration?
He's a Nigerian who operates within the Nigerian ecosystem.
But even as a Nigerian, you know how far you can go.
But you've heard the recent and the latest language is that it's go to court. So that's the reason. The reason is make the declaration and ask them to go to court. So the question, if we actually use the wrong words. The REC actually didn't make a declaration. He just made a statement because he didn't have any results to declare. His statement was, with the powers vested in me as the resident electoral commissioner, based on the result of the election, it's funny, right? It can't get funnier than that. There's nowhere you can make a declaration without the relevant forms. Declaration of results is a process. So for a lawyer of repute like Malam Hudu Ari, someone of his standing, to have gone through the screening, right, and be appointed, and he took the oath of office to be in charge of elections in a state, not ward, not local government. Something is wrong.
Okay, we talk about processes of the appointing of national commissioners, officials of INEC and the rest of them. At the end of the day, these are appointments.
Correct.
And we know who make the appointments.
Yes.
Is a president who is elected.
Correct.
through a political party. So at the end of the day, it's almost like impossible to separate, politics from these things. They are all political appointments. If you talk about even the security, for instance, the IGP is appointed by the president. And now you have police commissioners in the states who are going to be working alongside INEC and the rest of them. Is there any way to do it in a way that, we don't get partisan people involved with the process? Is it even possible?
Yes, it's possible. That's why I want to disagree with you. You see, the truth is, there are many Nigerians who have no political leaning. If you want to say they have political leaning, the only political leaning they have is Nigeria. They are not interested in APC, PDP, Labour Party, SDP, whatever. They don't have any of those. There are Nigerians today who are like that. A lot of them. Their interest is first to promote the good governance, peace, and progress of Nigeria.
What's the framework? Do we have a framework of sieving out these people?
Yes, we do. Nigeria does not lack the instruments to do the right things. The challenge with Nigeria is our refusal to do the right thing. Let me give you an example, sir. The problem of Nigeria is not that we don't have leaders. But the question is, when leadership is called to question, do they rise up to that responsibility? They are unable to rise up to those responsibilities at whatever strata of society where they lead because there are no consequences for wrongdoing in the country. So, for example, Abia State comes to mind. In Abia State, an INEC official was instructed to return a result for 103 votes when 27,000 accreditation took place.
Instructed by who?
Instructed by the supposed people who...
The powers that...
Yes, and that was why you had that challenge with Abia State's elections. That Obingwa matter. So that it took the scrutiny of the scope to say there is something wrong here. If every other local government is returning in this manner, how come this has this magnificent leap? The same result was changed from 103 to 97. From 97, they now went into, can we go back to the IREF? Can we go back to the polling unit result to collate at that level? It was at that level of collation from the polling unit result after the visit to the headquarters that they now came out with the right result. You clearly mentioned here that in Adamawa State, Adamawa election went well, supposedly. The first election of 18th went principally well. Yes, there were challenges. The APC candidate complained. The PDP candidate complained. Some people also complained. For me, complaints during election is normal. But the important thing to do is to ensure that every complaint is looked into with a view to showing at least some measure of transparency. That is one of the things that people have complained about at the national level that didn't take place. In many other states, there were reviews of results. There were reviews of, collation. So in this case, the governor came out and complained, though he was leading based on the result collated. In fact, to the governor, if you recall what he said, that the margin of lead and the supposed votes in the areas affected, it cannot even be compared. So there's no even need for the supplementary. But of course, INEC has said there must be supplementary.
No, it wasn't. The governor was leading with about over 30,000 votes.
31,000 plus, yes.
Yes, but then the votes in those areas cancelled was over 36,000 votes. So it was enough to change the result, and that was why it was cancelled.
Registered voters, not PVC collected.
Yeah, but based on what INEC said, they said what will come out of there was enough to change the results.
16,000 people voted in this one. So what was the difference? You see, I'm a data person. So I like to follow data. Some will call it, you follow science. Data, genuine data, cannot mislead you. Like I mentioned in one other forum, I said, look, is it possible for us to take a look at the trajectory from 1999 to 2023, or from 1999 to 2019 versus 2023 election? Can anyone see the significant difference in this election? From 1999, there are states that constantly returned over 2 million votes without fail. 1.9 million, 2.2 million, 1.8 million, 1.9 million, 1. Consistently. But in this election, they brought in less than 1 million votes. So the question is, what has been happening? And that brings to question the registration that was done in the past. Should we revisit them? Is the INEC register really what truly it is? Because if across the country, the average voting, turnout, the average voter turnout is between 500 and 1 million, 500 and 1 million, as against a registered voter of 7 million, 6 million, 5 million. Something must become fundamentally wrong.
Do you think that with this event in Adamawa State, with what happened in Adamawa State, do you think that it has the capacity to impact on the credibility on the overall elections, 2023 general elections?
I wouldn't want to paint, the entire election with one brush. The elections held at different polling units, ward levels, local government levels, state levels. In some areas, federal constituencies, and of course, senatorial districts. So I believe that if we want to do a proper post-mortem scientifically, we should take them at that structure with a view, to improving our systems. I have also advocated clearly that it does not make sense that we have presidential and National Assembly elections one day, which is 3 ballot papers. Then after 2 weeks, we spend the same amount of money or more for governorship and state assembly election, 2 ballot papers.
Okay. Whereas you are among the people that believe that all the elections should be conducted in one day.
All elections can be done in one day, just 5 ballot papers.
Okay, let's talk about the role of the police here.
Yes.
In Adamawa State. While this announcement was going on by the REC, there was a CP right beside him. So, and questions, have been asked about what is the role of the police really in this instance?
It's quite unfortunate, honestly. It's quite unfortunate. And I'm happy that eventually, as at last night, the police had asked the CP to report, to the headquarters for investigation. And for me, not just the CP, there was an acting director of DSS right there. There was also the
Civil Defense
fellow there. So the question is, who instructed them to give that level of cover to the REC? And while they gave that cover to the REC, what was the level of cover, the scope, and the other national commissioners? What was the level of security covering those other ones had? Because if the national commissioners had security covering, that elderly man wouldn't have been mobbed.
All right. During the elections, the 18th elections and even the 25th election, these issues came up on how police officers and other security operatives sometimes look the other way when things are happening because they're kind of partisan and all of that. Is there any way we can have the security operatives to be neutral during elections?
Consequences. If there are consequences for wrongdoing. Madam, let me give you a classical example. Nigerians across the world hold very serious public positions. Nigerians, the same Nigerians, they don't behave like the Nigerians you have here. Nigerians are policemen in UK, in US, in Canada, in Germany, in France. Nigerians are MDs, directors in World Bank, in different places. They don't behave like. Do you know why? Consequences. If you do anything outside the book, you will pay dearly for it. In fact, it might end your career. But in Nigeria, a man was indicted as a police CP or thereabout in this Apple 6 case. Some people were dismissed, some people were jailed, but this same man,
Danjuma,
yes, later became AIG when he was supposed to be serving punishment in this country. Should I say more? There is a man called Maurice Iwu who gave us one of the worst, is that election. He ended up becoming, appointed in his state to head another serious public office. Why? Because there were no consequences for failure. We constantly reinforce our failures. If every police officer knows, because there are codes of conduct, if every police officer knows that if I infringe on this code, it might be the end for me. You can't try it in China. They will kill you and kill your entire family. So the question is, what is the consequence? Currently, we have a former US president facing trial for actions he took before he became president. A former US president is still being investigated on pronouncement made even as a president. It is alleged that he incited insurrection. In Nigeria, have you ever heard that the big men ever go to court? When they do go to court and they get sentenced, they get pardon in the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months. There are no consequences. So the people who come back and still want to become president, want to become Senate president, want to become all manner of things.
And then that takes us also to the judiciary.
Vicious cycle.
What does how much does the judiciary do to help the system? Because even the impunity with which the politicians approach the courts, I mean.
That is why I cited the case of the colored money. The colored money that so many Nigerians died trying to get their money. Yeah, well, we call it new naira, but for me, it's not new naira. It's colored. It's just colored money. We just change the color. That's one case, which till tomorrow, I'm still trying to understand how Supreme Court assumed jurisdiction. I'm still trying to even understand how a man who contested the presidential primary of a political party, which took place weeks, if not a month, after another primary had taken place, and he didn't take part in it, suddenly became a candidate. When a candidate emerged, not just a man, 2 people. I'm still trying to understand how, the double standards that has gone on, that in certain elections that took place in this country, INEC said that there will be a repeat of an election the following day in certain constituencies. And while that repeat, people were preparing for that repeat, a declaration took place. And somebody has been given certificate of return.
So the Adamawa case is not an isolated case?
No, that's why I said that I'm not surprised. Because it's been coming gradually. It's been coming. For me, I say this very clearly. I think it was on this each station or probably a different program that I said that the technological improvement or introduction is fantastic. I work with the civil society and we do a lot of transparency activities on data collections and all that. I'd said clearly that what you need to do is collation can happen from the polling unit. Because if you look at the polling unit level, there seems to be some serious level of transparency to a very large extent at the polling unit level. It is when collation starts at the ward level. That's where the kata starts. So
once it leaves the polling
unit, then something
in between the polling unit and
then you now have issues. So if they had said, snap the result and post, right? So we had a challenge with that. So we don't even need to do that. With that, Beavers, we can create a spreadsheet, right? Just one spreadsheet per polling unit with a column to enter the result for each of the political parties. Once you send, you lose power. You lose control over the entry.
Data in that.
And it populates at the ward level, automatically populates at the local government level, automatically populates at the state level, and automatically populates at the national collection. If a mistake is done, then there will be a review.
But you see, Mr. Olisemeka, the INEC can only do its best. At the bottom of all of this are desperate politicians. How do you handle that? Because what we have seen so far is that any technology you bring, the politicians have a way of going around it. So what do you do?
So let me give you a classical example of INEC and best can't be enough. INEC, the best INEC has given us cannot be enough. Introduction of technology must follow the procedures and the processes that you have put in place. Like clearly, we all know that INEC has what you call quasi-judicial powers. So that's why INEC can review a declaration within 7 days and correct it. That's why INEC has the powers to punish its own people. That's why the national body can overrule the state, because they have that. What the state enjoys is delegated powers of the national. So if INEC introduces a technology, for example, and INEC follows through that process, if at the national level, INEC sets clear examples on what to do, a lot of the things that happen at the state elections will not happen. 2, or if all the elections happened on the 25th, do you know we will not have some of these shenanigans we have today? Do you know that a lot of the people who won governorship will not have won it? The political landscape in Nigeria would have been completely different. But because the politicians were not sure of what will happen on the 25th, so they did a lot of calculations, permutations, and what many of us will call underrating. And they were shocked on the 25th of February. Now it came to 18th. They looked at themselves and said, if we fold our hands and allow 25th to repeat itself, all of us will be out. That's what happened. So they employed extrajudicial means. They deployed thuggery, intimidation, and violence across board. That's why you saw that in certain elections, you see certain states where a political party failed terribly at the presidential and state national assembly elections. They cleaned it up at the governorship and the state house of assembly. And you kept wondering, how did that happen? A place where you have 21 state house of assembly seats, a political party will clear it. But if you compare that result with the presidential, you see that at the presidential level, it was a mixed bag. They will probably win one, the other parties will win one. That's how elections should be.
But coming back to Adamawa election, how would you rate INEC? Because a lot of people are saying that for INEC's immediate intervention on Sunday, there would have been, only God knows what would have happened in that state.
INEC had no choice. It was, for me, it wasn't an intervention. They were just correcting, they were self-correcting, correcting.
But at the time it came, didn't that matter?
Even if INEC didn't do what they just did, which was to correct that, unconstitutional, because that was a coup actually, unconstitutional pronouncement. It was just a pronouncement. It wasn't even a declaration. Because for you to make a declaration, you must enter the results in specific forms. Then you must combine the results of the first election and the supplementary election. Then you announce the political party. Then when you're done, you now enter the results in the form EC8E, where you now make the declaration. And don't forget that the law only empowers one person per state. It's clearly there. The only person that has a specific name in the Constitution and the Electoral Act, in the Constitution, is the INEC chairman, who is the National Collation Officer. But at the state level, the law states clearly that there will be a returning officer. And the REC is not a returning officer. So even with that pronouncement and all the shenanigans that happened, I mean, it was just a question of time.
You know, while that was happening in the hall, we had people shouting.
Yes.
We had people talking.
Telling him.
And so that's why I'm asking. If INEC had not issued that statement, who knows what would have happened?
Well, what would have happened would have been that, maybe violence would have taken place. But of course, we had some skirmishes here and there, because with that pronouncement, the supporters of Aisha Dahiru went to town and were sort of in celebratory mood, while the supporters of Amadou Fintiri were also complaining. But somehow, the police and the security agencies were able to, bring it down. And of course, that pronouncement by the governor asking everybody to calm, I think that helped his supporters to sheath the sword. And of course, in addition, with the fact that INEC swiftly made a statement and rendered that declaration or pronouncement null and void.
The election in Adamawa is particularly interesting for many people, because here you have an incumbent governor running against a female candidate in a major political party, the APC. A lot of people looked up to that election as a historical election. If you have the female candidate emerge as probably the first governor-elect in Nigeria. So a lot of interest was on that. A lot of watchers, a lot of people were looking forward to having that record being shattered, that what you call glass ceiling being shattered, and making history and all of that. Do you think that this has a consequence on other female politicians? Or do you think that these have, perhaps impacted on the image of her person, the candidate of the APC, Aisha Binani, in this race?
Okay, so I will answer you this way. Do you remember Mama Taraba of blessed memory?
Yes.
You remember Mama Taraba?
Yeah.
Good. She ran twice or thrice, and she made a very strong showing at that election against an incumbent. At the first ballot, she was leading. In fact, at the first ballot, it was concluded that she had won, until this same issue of the margin of lead between. There was a supplementary election in Taraba State. In fact, that one created a lot of turmoil, because it was said that the systems rigged her out. At the supplementary election, of course, the PDP cleared the supplementary election and took her. Now, with the case of the Adamawa...
She also won at the court, you didn't say?
Yes, I mean, she won at the court at the first instance, and of course, subsequently, she lost at the Court of Appeal and, of course, Supreme Court. So Mama Taraba deepened our democratic jurisprudence and made, a show of strength for the female candidature. And I believe that Aisha Dahiru Binani took a cue from her. Aisha Dahiru Binani has been in the news, for a while. Don't forget that, there was this controversy about her company printing the INEC ballot papers. Yes. And INEC came out to say, yes, at the time they did their verification, she was not a director, even if she started the company, that she was no longer a director in the company. But I'm a Nigerian. I understand the meaning of that. She still owns the company, supposedly, but she's no longer a director. That's what many people believe. So she's been in the news, and she's a strong politician. She's a sitting senator, for God's sake. So she's not a pushover. For someone to have gone to primary and beat so many men, did you see the margin of lead between her and the men at the primaries? So she was a very strong candidate. And look at the votes she garnered at the final collation. The difference shrank. So for me, Aisha Binani is a very strong candidate. And I'm a bit disappointed, that she was not circumspect. I believe strongly that if she was properly advised by her supporters or her aides, that acceptance speech was completely unnecessary. If I were in her shoes, with that kind of announcement by the REC, knowing clearly as a lawmaker, a sitting lawmaker, you actually took part in the 2022 Electoral Act. So you know the law. I wouldn't have made that acceptance speech. And even this going to court for interpretation, I wouldn't have done it. I've lost this time around. Go back to the drawing board. Prepare yourself for the next 4 years. 4 years is like this. It comes and goes. And this sitting governor now, he wins. He will not come back again, right? So you go against somebody who is not an incumbent. And there are many chances that you will probably win again.
All right, in the governor's acceptance speech, it said all of them were winners. He
Correct.
spoke to those who, his co-contenders, and said that all of them could work together. And, do you think that's enough to, douse the tension in the state and everybody moves on?
The governor will always remain governor. Amadou Fintiri is someone that, to a very large extent, I know his experience. He was a Speaker of the House and acting governor at some point. Before he finally came in to defeat an incumbent. Don't forget, he defeated Bindo, right? So he's a gentleman, I think amongst his colleagues, I think he's about the youngest or thereabout, and very soft-spoken gentleman. From one of the minorities in Adamawa State, actually. He's from Adagali. For me, I like his meme and his style. Because when I compare him with certain other governors in some part of Riverside, it would have been a war part between himself and the person who gave acceptance speech when coalition had not completed.
Because others have actually made the argument that, look,
yes.
the fact that the PDP is not the one
yes.
doing,
Correct.
involved in this,
yes.
doesn't mean that the PDP is innocent or
absolutely.
Exonerated from some of this kind of
election. I feel that the APC can take a look at the entire process with a view to going to the tribunal to possibly redress, some things. There may be, if they have good grounds, some things may, because the gap is not so much, right? So I believe 100% in the judicial process. Yes, there's nothing wrong with people saying to you, go to court. But I don't like when you tell me go to court and I go to court and you're still hounding me. You've told me to go to court, so chill. Let the court process take its course. So I believe she can still go to tribunal if she feels otherwise of the entire process. But not necessarily for talking about the REC. I mean, that's a no-no. But I want to congratulate Adamawa people for also not being violent, throughout this whole drama. It's a new Nollywood movie. They were peaceful and they were loving. There were no destructions. And at the end of the day, one person will be governor, and it's just for 4 years. And another person will come.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak and for all the perspectives you have given on this subject. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much.
On the show. Emmanuel Osemeka is a public affairs analyst, and he is being very, very insightful in this conversation. Well, we've come to the end of the program. Join us again tomorrow for another time. In case you've missed, catch up across all social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. I am Ayuba Ila. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iyaji, and do have a very pleasant day.